Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Rubin. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Rufai. How are we doing this morning?
Pushing.
Okay. Yeah, we're pushing?
Yeah.
That's all we can do. All right, so let's start with the world brief. Former President Donald Trump has begun to shut down the possibility of a second match against Vice President Kamala Harris after debating her Tuesday night. Now, he claims he doesn't need to debate her again because he won this debate. In a yes, he said it. He said it. In a post on Truth, the former president wrote, "In the world of boxing or UFC, when a fighter gets beaten or knocked out, they get up and scream, 'I demand a rematch, I demand a rematch.'" But it's no different with the debate. She was beaten badly last night. Every poll has us winning. In one case, 92-8. So why would I do a rematch? He also said it on the pictures that we see there. Now, both Trump and Harris saw each other at the 9/11 memorial service in New York yesterday on Wednesday, where they shook hands. Trump did actually say good job to her, and Harris in return said thank you before they stood with President Joe Biden in between them for the actual memorial service. You can see the two of them there, cordial in their greetings. But following on from a part of their debate, the Kremlin now in Russia says that it did not like the way Vladimir Putin's name was bandied around in the US presidential debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, and has urged the candidates to stop dragging him into their political fight. The Russian president's spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, was speaking a week after Putin himself said in a teasing remark that he favored Harris over Trump, prompting the White House to say Putin should stop commenting on the November 5 election. Peskov did also go on to say that Putin's name is used as one of the instruments in domestic political struggle in the United States, and we really, really don't like it. And we hope that they will leave our president's name alone. Alrighty, let's move on to some news out of South America. Peru's former president, Alberto Fujimori, who was convicted of human rights abuses and corruption, has died, aged 86. His daughter has confirmed that he had been battling cancer. Fujimori governed Peru between 1990 and 2000 before being forced from office amid allegations of corruption. His tough stance against the left-wing guerrilla insurgency, while president, also brought allegations of human rights abuses. But his supporters have continued to praise him for defeating the rebels at a time where they looked likely to seize power. Fujimori did flee the country, but was subsequently arrested and extradited before being convicted and jailed. He was actually released last December, Fujimori, from Lima's Barbadillo prison, having served more than 15 years of a 25-year prison sentence. And then coming back to the African continent, hundreds of passengers have been stranded at Kenya's main airport, and other airports too, to be honest, after workers went on strike and protest at a planned takeover by an Indian business group. Now, workers launched their protests over proposals to lease the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport to the Adani Group for 30 years. The Aviation Workers Union argues that this deal is opaque, that they've been left out of it, and they fear it could lead to job losses. The unions have agreed to return to work after being given assurances that this deal with Adani would not be finalized without their approval. The government says that the airport in the capital, Nairobi, is operating beyond capacity and needs private investment in order to upgrade it. Those are my World Brief stories for you this morning, my friends.
Okay, so a couple of things. I think the Kremlin that Putin is just trying to sound funny. He knows what he's doing. He's playing a game. He's always been interested in American politics. Even the last elections, although they went through a long case of Russian collusion, they couldn't find anything. But there are strong indications that there was a role played by Russia in that.
And in 2016 as
well. In 2016, I mean, and you cannot deny the fact that it's always been the case. And it's not today. I'll refer you, if you can try out, go listen to, it's like a 10-hour podcast, Richard Maddow's Ultra, Richard Maddow of MSNBC, where she talked about how the Nazi Germany was trying to infiltrate the 1940 American elections. In fact, they even had a candidate they were supporting, the Winky, in their elections. So it's not today you've always had foreign bodies trying to infiltrate American politics. Sure. So Putin knows what he's doing. And he deliberately did mention that to be able to spike Trump, because he knew what he wanted to do.
But do you think you could have spited Harris as well to have Russia, the big bad Russia, endorsing her own campaign?
No, he knows. So it's a tactical game he's playing. He knows what he wants to do. He knows how he wants to draw Trump out. He knows what he has against Trump. And that's why when Trump was saying, oh, if I was still president, none of this will have happened, it's a lie.
Right.
Putin will manipulate him and do it over 100 times.
Or eat him for breakfast, as Harris said.
I mean, as regards the constant Trump saying he won the debate, I mean, if you did win the debate, why are you shaking Harris and say, well done?
Who knows? Ayo, what do you think?
Okay, so this is interesting because on August 8th, former President Donald Trump had actually said that he was open to having 3 debates. At the time, it was President Joe Biden that was on the ticket.
Yes.
Now that this debate has happened, it's interesting to now see him capitulate and say that he's only happy with the one. I would assume, if you did really well and was an opportunity to showcase to Americans that you're the best candidate for the job, you would want to do it again and again, especially for a man like Trump who likes to talk. Yeah. He enjoys talking, he likes the sound of his voice. And of course, I mean, he's a leader. He wants to articulate his policies and let the American people know, especially standing head to toe with his opponent. So I think it would be a bit of a disservice to his campaign for him not to stand for another debate. In fact, what they'd agreed on following Kamala Harris coming on board is 2 presidential debates and 1 vice presidential debate. Right. So J.D. Vance is meant to stand with Tim Walz, whilst we have another debate between both of them. Following that first debate and the reviews that have come out of it, I believe the American people still want to hear more. Yeah. He could say that he would do this campaign ground and all, but it's always good to have that, head-to-head, toe-to-toe conversation. Yes, people might argue, oh, what do debates do? Do they really influence elections? But then they give an opportunity for the people to hear and see you under pressure sometimes. Sometimes it's not just about what you're saying, it's the presidential, how presidential you are, how you're able to respond under pressure, how you're able to speak. So those are some of the things that people evaluate. I hope he will change his mind. It will be such a disservice. I laughed at the analogy of the boxing, and I thought that was quite funny. Yes, it might work in boxing, but I don't think it applies in presidential elections. So please, I hope Trump would agree to another.
The debates affected. 1988, Michael Dukakis. One debate killed Dukakis. Destroyed him entirely.
Well, so give the people
I will quickly run through the issues that I can. Let me start with Peru. Alberto Kenya Fujimoto Inomoto, who we have now been told has died at the age of 86. He was an agricultural engineer. He was a university rector, rose to the position of a professor. Then in 1990, he went into politics. He succeeded Garcias. Under Garcias, there have been hyperinflation, a lot of unemployment. And I'm giving that background because I think people can learn. Other leaders, including those who are in the saddle at this moment, can learn from the example of Fujimori. Now, Fujimori now became president, and he introduced, liberal economic reforms. And he became the darling of the international financial institutions, IMF, World Bank. He was able to stabilize the economy. All these same things were applying in Nigeria. He did it, and they said, well, he brought growth, he brought progress. But by 1992, Fujimori had become, a dictator. He dissolved Congress. He gave himself authoritarian powers. When it was second term in 1995, he won. In 2000, he won. And in between, he had moved from liberal economic reforms to authoritarianism, to clientelism, to corruption, such that, in fact, he got so carried away, he attended a concert in Brazil on one occasion, and he gave Raisa Vatsisleva a box of diamonds. And that led to issues in Peru. Yes. So he fled to Japan, but eventually, the long arms of the law caught up with him in 2005, and he was, extradited to Peru. And then, he got charged to court for embezzlement, corruption, all kinds of charges. And he was sentenced to 25 years in prison, former head of state, But in September 2023, there was a court order, and he was released. Now, he was released December 2023. Now he's dead September 2024. So his legacy is mixed. And I think the reason I focused on him is to say there are lessons that other leaders can learn from his example. Because you can start as a good leader and end up as a bad leader. Yeah. It's a polarity that leaders should watch out for. Quickly, on the United States and Russia. Putin granted an interview on September 5, in which he was saying, he was supporting President Biden. Now that President Biden has chosen Kamala Harris and has asked all supporters to go to Kamala Harris, he will support Kamala Harris. Right. So the subject featured in the debate that they had with Kamala Harris saying, Putin will eat you for lunch. If you were president by now, Kiev will have Putin there and all of that. And President Trump saying, well, look, if I was president, I will fix the issue in Ukraine even before being sworn in.
Exactly, President.
How he would do it, he didn't tell us. And he was very critical of President Biden. And now you see the Russians saying, please leave the name of our president out of this. International hypocrisy. John Kirby, White House spokesman, when Putin made the initial statement, had told Putin to keep his mouth out of American politics. But this is the foreign policy dimension of the debate. But the truth of the matter is that the Putin campaign team, they are having issues. They thought that, Trump, they say that Trump missed the opportunity to make Kamala Harris look bad because he was overreacting to all debates and he wasn't staying on message. So if he says he doesn't want another debate, President Trump is very good at deceiving himself. So that's what he has done. After all, Truth Social has lost in the stock market. Yes, the stock share price went down by over 10% yesterday because you know that Truth Social is linked to the popularity of President Trump, who owns 57% of that company. So let him deceive himself.
Let's see. Initially he didn't want to have this debate. He was going back and forth, and there was talks about him running away from this one. So he might change his mind. Who knows? Who knows? Well, let's move on now to newspaper headlines across the globe. We begin here in Nigeria with This Day newspaper. And This Day newspaper, one of the stories on the front page is the Nigerian Economic Summit Group has advised the federal government to untie Nigeria's underperforming national assets in order to drive the economy and enable its citizens to experience prosperity. Now, NESG representatives did visit Arise News on Wednesday. It was a great conversation on nation building, and our own special correspondent, Abi Olawi, has a report which will take you through it all. Moving on then to the New Telegraph. The New Telegraph is looking at the risks associated with the major flooding we're seeing in Borno State. The Nigerian Center for Disease Control and Prevention has says that there's a need for proactive measures to be put in place in order to avoid disease outbreaks in Borno State as a result of the floods, which has already led to loss of lives and property. Its Director General, Dr. Jude Idris, has warned that flooding usually comes with grave health implications such as diseases like dengue fever and other outbreaks, diarrhea, cholera, typhoid and hepatitis. So it is very, very much a serious situation over in Borno. The Daily Independent also carries the flooding in Borno State, but its headline focuses on food scarcity hitting Maiduguri as tomato farmers lose 1 billion naira. Now, 1 million people, bless you, Dr. Rubin, have been affected, and despite reports of some being able to return home, the devastation left in the flood's wake will be felt for some time. The Guardian, however, takes a look at policing in Nigeria. Its headline says, amid lean resources, the federal government spends 13 billion naira subsidizing VIPs' protection every year. The article goes on to share that of the 400,000 policemen in the country, 150,000 officers are attached to VIPs and unauthorized persons. Now, The Guardian usually does a great job of looking at societal issues in depth, and they've also shared a range of Nigerian police force average salaries, which goes from just over 50,000 naira to 711,450 naira, depending on your rank. Those are either ends of the scale. They're a really interesting report. And then The Punch, it's reporting on the 10 defendants who participated in last month's hunger protests. They've been granted bail of 10 million naira each and have been banned from participating in further protests during this trial. They are facing 6 counts in connection with alleged treason, intent to destabilize Nigeria, conspiracy to commit felony, and inciting mutiny, punishable under Section 97 of the Penal Code. Let us not forget that there's been widespread condemnation of this entire trial process. Amnesty International have also called this legal process a sham trial. And then finally, the Vanguard hones in on the International Monetary Fund, calling on the federal government to protect the poor from the impacts of petrol price hike that we are currently seeing. If we now move on to African papers, the Daily Nation of Kenya has led with the chaos at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, as well as other airports in the country. As we mentioned in the World Brief, thousands of passengers have been left stranded as members of the Kenyan Aviation Workers Union begin their strike over the government's plans to lease their flagship airport to Adani Enterprises in a deal that they say is shrouded in secrecy. And then the Daily Graphic of Ghana is reporting on the government increasing the price of cocoa beans paid to farmers. Goodness, now I'm coughing. Thank you. At the farm gate to 48,000 Ghanaian cedis per ton. That's just over $3,000 or approximately 5 million naira. And that's last year, the amount that was paid to them was just about half of that. So there's been a substantial increase in the prices paid to cocoa farmers. And then lastly, our international papers, if we look at the Times UK, it has Labour ordering the biggest reform in the National Health Service history, plans that will shift billions of pounds away from unproductive hospitals. And this is off the back of a review which said that the NHS is in dire condition. It says that waiting times are too long for every part of the health service, including accident and emergency, which has caused 14,000 avoidable deaths. No progress, this report says, has been made in diagnosing cancer, which means survival rates are lagging behind other developed countries. So a stark awakening happening with the NHS there.
I mean, these are the conversations people have constantly had about the NHS. It's fast becoming moribund. You need a lot more capital injection, but the question is where they're going to get the money from to be able to put money into the NHS. That's what it needs. As regards Kenya, what is happening with the Adani Group? I mean, it's just a replica of the things that have always happened before on the African continent. People feel, yes, if Adani comes in, it's going to strip away our rights, but might that necessarily be the case? The taste of the pudding, they say, is in the eating. There were real big, walk slowly situation yesterday, I think at the JKI, where workers were told to work slowly so that the queue will not move up on time and things like that. And the last thing I quickly want to talk about is this attempt to criminalize protests. People should remember in this country that those that came in through protests are now criminalizing protests. Hope when the tables turn in the future, they're not going to complain. Because we'll remind them, nobody was arrested for treason when they shut this country down in January 2012 in subsidy protests. When they carried coffin of Goodluck Jonathan, Jonathan must go. When they tied the word Jonathan around a goat, nobody arrested them for treason then.
All right, let me go to the story on The Guardian, the front page of The Guardian newspaper, an in-depth report as to how the police force, about 15,000 of the 440,000 police personnel that we have in Nigeria or 400,000 policemen are attached to VIPs and unauthorized persons. IG after IG have come up, and the moment they appoint them, the first thing they would say is that we are withdrawing officers from private citizens. And then you wonder why Nigeria as a nation seems to be designed to favor the 1% of the rich, and then you ignore the hundreds of millions of Nigerians who are suffering. We already have a deficit in terms of the one policeman to 450 as it's recognized or as it's recommended worldwide. Unfortunately, what then happens is that with the scarce resource that we have in terms of personnel, we then attach them to people who can afford their own private security. And so you wonder why, again, I ask, this nation is designed to favor 1% of the 1% who are the rich and the elite, whilst the poor keep suffering. One thing I'd say is there's two ways, and I'll end here. The first part is the responsibility of the police to ensure that they actually implement this withdrawal of personnel from private citizens. And the other side is the responsibility of the people themselves. When they go out with their police attachés, holding their handbags and the like, they should feel ashamed. There has to be a place for active citizenship where we ourselves begin to hold them to account.
Agreed.
Okay, quickly, the NHS. The Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, will be telling us today that the NHS has to reform or die, and that unproductive hospitals will be defunded. And what is the basis of this? When West Streeting, the current health secretary, assumed office, one of the first things he tried to do was to look at the NHS. And he set up a committee led by Lord Darzi of Denham, former health secretary and surgeon. And what Lord Darzi has come up with in that report is to say that the NHS has failed the social contract with the people of England. You have NHS England, you have NHS Wales, you have the other one in Camro in Scotland. And what they want to do is to reform. Is to reform the system, and they're going to announce a 10-year plan. Waiting list too long, many people dying, people with cancer not being treated. And it is, however, most ironic that it's the same Labour Party that established the NHS in 1948 under Clement Attlee and with Bevan as Minister of Health to provide a comprehensive healthcare system in England to address issues of disease. It is the same party that is now coming back to say the NHS has failed. Where are they going to find the money from? Well, Keir Starmer and the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, they are telling us that they need to plug a 22 billion black hole. Now, the details of that black hole, they have not told us. No. They have not given us. But they say they will plug the black hole, and perhaps from that black hole, what they are able to save from winter fuel payments and other taxation,
agreed,
they will be used to reform the NHS. We do not hope that the NHS will die.
Let's see how far that would go. Thank you so much, Adefemi.
Always a pleasure.
Good to see you.